Hey there, listeners. Welcome back to Infinite Podcast, where the conversations never run dry. I'm your host, and let me tell you, Simon's got a beef with vitamins today. Simon thinks popping pills replaces veggies. I say that's lazy wellness. Micronutrients are champs, true, but best from food, not just supplements. Eat those greens, am I right?
Oh, totally. The pill for every ill approach? Not buying it. You can't just live on pizza and have a multivitamin and call it a day. Your body isn't fooled that easily. I'm all for eating an actual orange over downing vitamin C pills like they're candy. Lazy wellness. Love that term, by the way.
I hear ya, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Supplements have a place, especially for those with deficiencies or specific dietary needs. Sure, nothing beats the real deal from food, but there's nuance to it. People avoiding the sun like vampires, they might need that vitamin D boost. But yeah, chasing supplements as a cure-all instead of improving diet, that's a hard no.
All right, let's break it down. You've got your vitamins, A, C, D, E, and K, then the B complex gang, super important for energy and keeping your body's systems running smooth. Minerals like calcium and magnesium, big deal for bones and muscles. And trace elements, I'm talking iron, zinc, iodine, they're tiny but mighty, helping with everything from oxygen transport to immune function. It's like this, if your body is an orchestra, micronutrients are the musicians. No violinist, you miss out on those sweet, sweet strings. Miss your trumpet player, and well, kiss those majestic blasts goodbye. They all work together to create a harmony of health.
Man, that's a solid analogy with the orchestra. But let's remember, more musicians don't always make better music. Loading up on zinc won't turn you into Superman. It's about balance. Too much of one thing can throw the whole system off. Our bodies aren't looking for a rock concert when it's supposed to be a symphony, right?
Whoa, hold the phone. Are you saying dumping a boatload of zinc in my system won't give me superpowers? Man, and here I was thinking I'd wake up able to shoot laser beams from my eyes if I just cranked up the vitamins. Seriously though, balance makes perfect sense. You can't just crank it to 11 on everything. Your body is like, hey, we're all full up here. Chill. Too much of a good thing is still too much, right?
No lasers for you, Simon. But seriously, let's not forget, going overboard can be downright dangerous. Fat-soluble vitamins like A and D can accumulate to toxic levels if you're downing them like there's no tomorrow. Ever heard of hypervitaminosis? Yeah, it's a thing. Moderation is king. Think about your daily Java. Sure, it wakes you up, but too much will have you twitching like a squirrel on espresso. Same principle with micronutrients.
Oh, absolutely. When it comes to fat-soluble vitamins like A, D, E, and K, your body's not flushing out the excess daily. They stick around in fatty tissues and the liver. Vitamin A overdose? Hello, hair loss and liver damage. And with vitamin D, too much can mess up your calcium levels, potentially harming your heart and kidneys. No joke there. Water-soluble vitamins are a bit more forgiving since you pee out what you don't need. But still, moderation is key. Like caffeine, you get jittery and anxious if you overdo it, despite being water-soluble. Just because your body can get rid of the extras doesn't mean it likes doing that all the time.
Exactly. You got it, Simon. And with water-soluble vitamins like the B's and C, while it's rare to overdose, it isn't impossible. Taking megadoses can lead to issues like nerve damage or diarrhea. Plus, constantly bombarding your system can strain your kidneys. Also, just because you're peeing out excess doesn't mean those nutrients are used efficiently. It's not just about intake, it's absorption that counts. Pop a pill on an empty stomach and whoosh, right through you without the benefits. Like pouring water into a sieve expecting a drink.
So, you're saying that it's not just about what or how much we take in, but how our body actually uses it. Now I'm curious, how do we make sure we're absorbing these nutrients properly? Any pro tips, or should we just keep it simple and stick to a balanced diet?
Absolutely, it's all about the uptake. Want a tip? Consider pairing certain foods to boost absorption. Like vitamin C can help you absorb iron better. Think spinach salad with some citrus dressing. But honestly, most times keeping it simple with a varied, balanced diet does the trick. Are there any particular food combos you found work well for nutrient absorption, Simon?
For sure, Joe. Let's take calcium and vitamin D. They're like best buds when it comes to bone health. Calcium is the building block but needs vitamin D to help take it in. A little sun and some dairy or fortified alternatives, and you're golden, or at least your bones are. Then there's fat-soluble vitamins. Avocado or olive oil with your veggies helps soak up all those A, D, E, and K vitamins. On their own, not so much. It's a bit of mix and match, really.
Right on the money, Simon. It's like key and lock. Some nutrients just click together. The avocado tip, genius for maximizing those veggies. Food synergy isn't just buzzworthy, it's smart eating.
Hold up, though. We're chatting about all these combos like everyone's got the time or know-how. Joe, not everyone's a chef with a PhD in nutrition. Sure, pair this with that. Easy to say, hard to do for lots of folks. What about when life's too fast-paced? When you barely have time to toast a bagel, thinking about food synergy seems like a luxury, doesn't it?
I feel that, Simon. It's tough juggling work, life, and trying to be the perfect eater. Real talk, most people aren't whipping up nutritionally balanced gourmet meals daily. Life's hectic. It's about finding those little hacks, quick wins like a banana with your peanut butter toast for an on-the-go boost. Not perfect, but it's about doing what you can with the time you've got, right?
Sorry, Joe, can't really go full encyclopedia on you here with a rundown of all those intricate facts. We keep it real and casual, remember? But yeah, absolutely. Little daily life hacks are the game changers. All about those small, smart choices. Grab an apple instead of chips, toss some berries in that cereal. Tiny tweaks, big health leaps. Just gotta nudge our habits in the right direction. And hey, if today's toast was plain, aim for a fruit sidekick tomorrow. Baby steps.
So Simon, this reminds me of my grandma. She wasn't a nutritionist or anything, but she had this thing about food. Every meal, no matter how simple, had something fresh. I remember visiting her and she'd serve the most basic chicken soup, right? But then she'd go her little garden, pluck some fresh parsley and sprinkle it on top. It wasn't just for show, it was her way of adding vitamins and minerals. She used to say, "Every bite's an opportunity." She lived to 95, strong as an ox. Just goes to show, doesn't it? Those small, smart choices add up.
Your grandma was wise, tons of respect, but let's not get too misty-eyed over parsley. It's not like it's a miracle herb. Sure, fresh herbs have nutrients, but honestly, eating well doesn't mean you need a green thumb or some secret family knowledge. It's basic stuff. Mix your colors on the plate. Greens are good, processed bad. Anyone can learn it. We just love romanticizing the past. But come on, even grandma probably sneaked a cookie or two when no one was looking. It's all about balance, right?
You're spot on, Simon. We do romanticize the past. Those warm, fuzzy memories can make anything look like a staple from the elixir of life. It's that nostalgia factor. We associate it with simpler times and wholesome living. And yeah, cookies and treats were definitely in the mix even back then. Grandma was all about moderation, not deprivation. That principle sticks with me. It's comforting, you know? It takes the pressure off trying to eat perfectly all the time. It really is about finding that balance and enjoying your food along the way.
I mean, if we're all trying to be micronutrient maestros, I'm pretty sure my last meal was more like a garage band, kind of all over the place. But hey, getting your vitamins and minerals in check doesn't mean you can't have fun with your food. Picture this, throwing veggies at your face, hoping some stick. It's the latest trend, face food synergism. Guaranteed absorption or your laughter back.
You might be onto something there, Simon. Tossing veggies at your face sure sounds like a fringe benefit of a food fight. But it takes more than hoping for face food synergism to nail that nutrient game. Speaking of games, do you think we're on the right track trying to fine-tune our diets like we're tuning guitars? Or is variety the real unsung hero of wellness?
Totally, Joe. Variety isn't just the spice of life, it's its vitamin jar, too. Speaking of variety, it makes me think about those sailors back in the day on their long voyages, getting scurvy because their diets lacked. What was it? Ah, vitamin C. It's wild how these historical deficiencies like scurvy or selenium issues actually shaped entire societies. Imagine sailing across oceans without any citrus. Talk about a lesson in nutrition.
Scurvy really did a number on those sailors. Big lesson for all of us. But let's not just talk about the past as if we've conquered all nutritional challenges. Sure, we've come far with fortified foods and supplements, but vitamin deficiencies are still very much present in many parts of the world. It's great that we know about these things now. Recognizing deficiency diseases has completely transformed public health. However, we can't ignore that even with all this historical know-how, we're still facing similar issues today, perhaps dressed in modern clothes. Isn't it ironic how we keep running into the same walls?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Joe. It gets to me, honestly. We've mapped the human genome, we're dabbing into AI, yet here we are, still grappling with vitamin deficiencies. It's bonkers. These aren't new riddles, they're old puzzles we should have solved by now. Our ancestors were learning blind, but today, we've got the knowledge and tools, yet millions don't get that baseline nutrition. Makes you wonder where the disconnect is. Frustrating, man.
Absolutely frustrating, Simon. With our tech and resources, you'd think we'd have this figured out. So what's the deal? Why do you think there's such a disconnect between understanding nutrition and actually applying that knowledge where it's needed most?
Joe, the deal's as tangled as headphones in a pocket. One biggie is education, spreading the word so everyone knows what's up with nutrients. Money's tight in places, making healthy foods more a dream than dinner. And let's not forget politics. Food isn't just food, it's power, control. History's taught us tons about nutrition, but applying it? That's another game. We can send rovers to Mars, but getting carrots to kitchens? We're fumbling the ball, mate.
No doubt about it. Education and resources are part of the mix. But let's also consider priorities. Society today is pumped about instant gratification, from fast food to next-day delivery. We're wired to want things now, not later. So investing in long-term health, it's like trying to sell tickets for a concert that's happening in 50 years. You just don't get the same buzz. And don't even get me started on policy. Nutrition's often a footnote where it should be a headline. If we treated these issues with the urgency of a new iPhone release, we'd probably see some real change, right?
Oh, for sure, Joe. It's all about the now, but there's this giant history lesson we're snoozing on. Look past scurvy. You've got sailors in the 1700s practically rotting away until Dr. James Lind proved citrus fruits could prevent it. Changed naval health forever. Fast forward, there's selenium, a trace mineral. Who'd have thought something so tiny could be huge? In China, selenium-poor diets led to Kashan disease, heart problems galore, until supplements turned the tables. But here's the kicker. These lessons aren't just dusty old books. They're screaming billboards about how nutrition's vital, from a sailor's first lemonade to a heartbeat in modern Asia. Wild, huh?
Definitely wild, Simon. So circling back to Lind's citrus cure, do you think those kinds of monumental discoveries still have the same impact today? Or are we too inundated with information to recognize game changers when they're right in front of us?
You think we're so swamped with data that these breakthroughs just get lost in the noise? Because honestly, every day there's a new superfood or miracle diet making headlines. Maybe we're just numb to the next big thing in nutrition until it slaps us with a vitamin-enriched fish across the face.
I don't really think it's about being numb, Simon. More like we're critical because of the hype overload. When every week there's a new breakthrough, skepticism sets in. And it's valid to be cautious. We've seen too many fad diets and superfoods turn out to be less than super. Historical nutrition discoveries had time to prove their worth, like with Lind's citrus or selenium supplementation for Kashan disease. These weren't overnight sensations. They withstood the test of time. Today, we're too quick to jump on bandwagons without that proof.
Right, Joe. It's tough to sort the wheat from the chaff with trends exploding like popcorn kernels. Those old-school discoveries had years to marinate in proof. Time's our best filter for finding nutrition's real MVPs.
Simon, when it comes to historical nutrition discoveries, I think they had something crucial: context. Time weeded out the fluff because life and death stakes forced folks to pay attention. Today's trends don't have that urgency. We aren't dropping from scurvy left and right, so there's no rush to verify new finds. The pace at which we get nutrition information now doesn't allow for that context to develop. It's like those historic breakthroughs were etched in stone, while today's are written on sticky notes.
Absolutely, Joe. Back in the scurvy-ridden days, sailors' lives hinged on finding a cure, resulting in widespread lime and lemon distribution across navies once they understood vitamin C's role. That urgency created lasting impact. Likewise, selenium wasn't just some dietary fad, it was the key to stopping Kishan disease. Once scientists pinpointed the lack of selenium as the cause, regions added selenium to fertilizers or provided supplements, drastically reducing occurrences. Without these profound consequences, driving immediate change like life or death situations did, modern nutrition trends often struggle for that kind of gravitas or sticky power.
It's not just a matter of emergency, Simon. It's about understanding broad consequences. With scurvy or Kishan disease, whole societies were at risk, economies too. They depended on strong navies for trade and survival. Similarly, vast regions suffered because crops lacked selenium. It was an economic concern as much as a health one. Once they figured this out, governments had to act fast, changing farming practices, advising diets, even reshaping public policy. These weren't wellness trends. They were essential moves to protect society's backbone. It frames our modern dilemmas differently. Nutrition today isn't only personal health, it's societal stability.
Joe, you think the urgency back then was supercharged because nations knew their survival hung on fixing these health crises? Like how solving the scurvy mystery wasn't just for keeping sailors shipshape, but essential for keeping those trade routes and the economy alive and kicking.
Big time, Simon. A nation's power came from its fleets. Get rid of scurvy and you keep your ships at sea, your trade flowing, and your enemies on their toes. It was a mega issue with massive ripple effects for the economy and national security, not just health. That's a motivator like no other. When survival's on the line, people get real serious, real fast.
Totally, Joe. Scurvy and selenium weren't just about keeping a few folks healthy, they were about fortifying whole nations. It's fascinating how nutrition played a frontline role in shaping our societies. Who knows what current health issue might be the next to leave such a mark on history?
Funny how we talk about those monumental nutrition shifts in history. Meanwhile, these days, our diet breakthroughs often turn into comedy sketches. Take the kale craze. Remember when people thought they'd unlock eternal youth by eating truckloads of it? We've seen some wild misfires trying to shortcut health. How about we dive into some of those comedic confessions from dieters who missed the memo on balance? I bet there are some gold stories out there. Speaking of, have you caught any laugh-worthy diet blunders online lately, Simon?
Oh, Joe, remember that one guy who thought he'd nailed it with the air and sunshine diet? Like photosynthesis was going to fill his belly? 3 days in, he's tired, cranky, and can't figure out why he's not turning green and sprouting leaves. The logic gap was wider than my nan's lasagna layers. And I swear, every second Instagram story was someone swearing by a magic juice cleanse like they'd found the elixir of life. Kale was basically a celebrity. It should have had its own star on the Walk of Fame.
Simon, that guy must have thought he was a plant in a past life. But really, air and sunshine sounds like the diet plan made for a garden gnome, not a person. And these Instagram juice cleanses? They make it sound so mystical, but let's be real. After 3 days, you're not floating on a cloud of enlightenment. You're just dreaming about cheeseburgers. Kale's been put on such a pedestal, you'd think it could walk your dog and do your taxes too.
Right? That air and sunshine guy was probably channeling his inner cactus, but last time I checked, humans aren't exactly known for our photosynthesis skills. And those juice cleanses, you end up a hollow-eyed ghost haunting the fridge at midnight. Kale's got clout, all right, but until it can whip up a mean spaghetti bolognese, I'll pass on giving it any awards.
Absolutely, Simon. That photosynthesis diet mix-up is a classic example where someone took the idea of "you are what you eat" way too literally. And these juice cleanses, they become less about health and more about the bragging rights. Look at me, surviving on kale essence and optimism. People might adore kale's green goodness, but let's face it, a bowl of kale's not solving all your problems unless your problem is not having enough kale.
Ha, Joe, surviving on optimism sure as heck isn't getting you through a marathon. Sure, kale's filled with vitamins, but let me tell ya, eat nothing but kale, and the only thing growing will be your boredom. Bragging about that juice cleanse when your stomach's crying out for a slice of pizza is like proudly sailing a sinking ship. And problem solved by kale? If only taxes were paid in leafy greens, right? What we need is to remember food's joy. It ain't just fuel, it's the spice of life.
Oh, for sure, if we could pay taxes in kale, I'd be farming it in my backyard right now. But seriously, imagine explaining to the IRS agent, no cash, but I've got a fresh harvest of curly kale for you. It's a great reminder that we've got to mix enjoyment with our health. Life's too short for diet extremes. Let's make room on the plate for both nourishment and indulgence. Kale can cozy up next to a slice of pizza. They can be friends.
Joe, that's the spirit. Imagine a world where kale and pizza join forces for the greater good of taste buds and nutrient levels alike. Balance is key. It's like walking a tightrope while juggling. You need poise and a bit of pizzazz. Wholeheartedly endorse eating your greens. But if a slab of chocolate cake occasionally crashes the veggie party, so be it. A dietary yin-yang mate, that's the dream.
Whoa, that's an interesting take. Kale and pizza joining forces for the ultimate power meal. It's like creating a superhero team where every member brings something unique to the table. Chocolate cake as a surprise guest? Count me in. That kind of balance could make eating well less of a chore and more of a celebration. No wonder folks end up on those crazy diet bandwagons when they miss out on the joy of food with the fasting fads. Let's eat smarter, not sadder.
Joe, eat smarter, not sadder. Love it. But let's not kid ourselves. Anyone who says eating a mountain of kale will feel the same as biting into a greasy slice of pizza is selling something. These fad diets, they're like those infomercials where everyone's smiling doing chores with some weird gadget. Real life isn't a commercial. Balance doesn't come in a pill or a powder. It's about making peace with a cookie in one hand and a carrot in the other. It's a food truce, my friend.
Simon, this takes me back to my cousin, right? Big fella decided he'd turn his life around with the Superfood Supreme diet. Nothing but kale, quinoa, and blueberries for 30 days. By week 2, I catch him at a family BBQ, sneaking meat like he's part of some underground brisket ring. His eyes said it all. The man was in superfood prison dreaming of contraband burgers. So much for miraculous transformations, eh? Turns out, even his dog got tired of quinoa leftovers. We had a good laugh, and he realized a superfood extreme shirt doesn't fit when you're stuffing your face with grandma's potato salad behind the shed. Balance triumphed once again.
Well, Joe, I've got to play devil's advocate here. As much as I love poking fun at these fad diets, there's something to be said for committing to a change, even if it's a bit drastic. Some folks might need that Superfood Supreme regimen to kickstart better habits, provided they don't overdo it. Kale, quinoa, and blueberries pack a nutritional punch. Iron, protein, antioxidants, the works. If it sparks a shift towards including more nutrient-rich foods in his diet, even after the 30-day stint, it's not all bad. Of course, moderation is key, like not turning your back on a juicy piece of grilled chicken or some hearty whole grain bread. The trick is sticking to the good changes post-diet without feeling like you're constantly missing out.
Simon, you've got a point there. A jumpstart with superfoods isn't all doom and gloom. If it leads to lasting healthy choices, there's definitely merit. And hey, if someone turns their blueberry-stained kale leaf into a forever kind of love, who am I to argue? It's all about that sustainable shift. Start extreme if you have to, but land in a place where food brings health and happiness. Let's hear from our listeners next. What are some of the wild diet trials that taught you a lesson, or maybe left you daydreaming about donuts?
Totally, Joe. Speaking of lasting healthy choices, it's wild how food not only shapes our body, but also our brain power, right? Just as those superfoods might do a body good, tiny titans like zinc and magnesium are like brain fuel. Some call them the gateway to mental clarity and mood magic. I mean, sure, we can't expect a handful of blueberry brilliance to solve life's riddles, but there might be more to this neuronutrition gig than meets the eye. It begs the question, can what we eat nudge our noggin toward nirvana? What do you think? Are micronutrients the unsung heroes of mental health?
Simon, are you sure about that? Look, I get that there's some buzz around zinc and magnesium possibly giving us a leg up in the brain department. But let's not put all our chips on neuronutrition just yet. Sure, micronutrients are vital, but they're part of a big mix, like having a single puzzle piece and thinking we see the whole picture. And this concept of food dramatically changing our thinking or destiny, that's stretching it pretty thin. It makes for a flashy headline, but personality is complex and isn't going to flip on a dime with a sprinkle of B vitamins. Now, if eating spinach suddenly made me a math genius, I'd have Popeye beat by a mile. But I'm skeptical. Show me the research, and then we'll talk mood foods.
Oh, Joe, that's fair. I'll bite. The brain-gut connection is buzzing nowadays, but flipping your personality like a pancake with some extra omega-3s does seem out there. These micronutrients are crucial for sure, but they're part of a massive ensemble cast inside our bodies. It's not a one-man show. Yet could we be underestimating the subtler shifts? Think about it. No zinc and magnesium could mean feeling fuzzier than an old TV screen. Not saying you'll become Einstein over brunch, but maybe that spinach is smoothing out some mental static. Keep the snake oil in the bottle, but can't we leave room at the table for a tiny nutritional nudge towards Brainiacville?
Hold on a minute, Simon. You're telling me there's a chance the trail mix I've been snacking on might actually clear up the fog in my noggin due to its zinc content? And here I was thinking those nuts and seeds were just keeping hunger at bay between meals. It's a bit wild to think that these tiny nutrients we rarely see or taste might be the puppeteers of our gray matter. Sure, it's not like you can eat your way to being a brain surgeon, but there could be something to this whole you are what you eat thing after all, especially when it comes to mental performance. Sounds like we need to dive deeper into this rabbit hole of neuronutrition.
Definitely, Joe. It's a blend of tiny tweaks making big waves upstairs. Nibbling on zinc-heavy snacks might not have you sprouting gray hairs of wisdom overnight, but let's not dismiss the munchies as mindless. If chowing down on seeds can untangle a few mental knots, I'm all for it. Consistently tossing back those nutrient-dense bites could mean better anchored thoughts in stormy seas of stress. Not promising enlightenment in every almond, but if science suggests a snack can buffer my brain circuits, why not? It's about keeping an open mind without it spilling over, mate. Let's see where the neuronutrition tide takes us.
I hear you on the incremental benefits, Simon, but I can't help wondering if we're considering the potential mental boost from our diets. Do you think there's a risk of crossing into relying too much on these nutritional tweaks? Like, where do we draw the line between smart eating and obsessing over every micromilligram as if it's a magic bullet for brain power?
Joe, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? We've got to watch for the fine line between awareness and obsession. Science does say micronutrients are brain allies, like zinc helps neurons chat, and without enough magnesium, we could feel more frazzled than a cat in a bathtub. But fixating on them, as if they're cerebral superchargers, might make us miss the bigger picture. That healthy noggin needs sleep, exercise, and a dollop of stress management, not just a micronutrient menu. Sure, snack on that zinc, but let's not turn our diets into a high-stakes nutrient poker game. Balance, remember?
You've nailed it, Simon. Moderation over mastery when it comes to those micronutrients. It's part of a whole-body approach to wellness. You can't just bank on zinc to zen out. There's so much hype around mental health and diet. It's worth us keeping an eye on future studies that untangle this nutrient-brain behavior web. All right, listeners, weigh in. How do you balance the nutrient know-how without falling down the rabbit hole? And what about these brain-boosting diets? Ever tried one and felt sharper, or is it all just placebo? Let's chew on that.
It's a jungle out there with all the health info, Joe. Speaking of which, let's march into this wild territory of nutrigenomics. It sounds like science fiction, doesn't it? Eating based on your DNA, like getting a food script from your genes. The idea that we can fine-tune our diets to our genetic makeup could be a game changer in personal health. Your genes might whisper secrets about how you handle carbs, fats, maybe even leafy greens. It's feeding time at the zoo, and every animal's got its own diet. Turns out, we might be no different. How do you feel about having your dinner party catered by your DNA?
That's an intriguing picture you're painting. Your DNA as the ultimate dinner host. But here's a thought. How detailed do we think this genetic menu can get? Do we believe in precise instructions from our genes saying, hold the mayo, more omega-3s? Or is it more like vague guidelines open to interpretation?
Absolutely, Joe. It's more than just vague post-it notes your body leaves around. The precision is surprising. Researchers are pinpointing which genetic patterns match certain food responses, like a speed dating round between nutrients and your DNA. Picture it, your genes saying, cut back on coffee, buddy, or you, my friend, need more vitamin B. Still, we're not at sci-fi movie levels yet, where a cheek swab crafts the perfect meal plan. The big challenge is sifting through loads of genetic info to find what truly matters for dinner decisions. Could swapping tails with our taste buds lead us all to healthier lives?
Swapping tails with our taste buds is one thing, Simon, but we've got to ask if the juice is worth the squeeze. Hunting through your DNA to decide if broccoli is better for you than your neighbor, sure, it's cool in theory. But translating that into a practical plan that's not wildly expensive or complex, that's the real hurdle. Plus, I'm all for progress, but don't most of us struggle with just picking veggies over vending machine snacks? Let's sort out the basics before we go genome deep in our grocery lists.
You're spot on, Joe. Because let's face it, most of us are still figuring out the microwave, never mind our metabolic pathways. And picture this, getting a DNA-based diet plan, and it turns out my perfect food match is kale. But I hate kale. There goes the dream of a guilt-free pizza prescription. It's like finding the love of your life on a dating app, only to discover they live on the other side of the planet. Or even worse, they're into CrossFit. Looks like for now, we'll have to settle for flirting with whole grains and occasional speed dates with salad.
Simon, can you imagine the dating profile for these gene-matched meals? I'm a tall, dark, and handsome plate of genetically personalized broccoli, looking for someone who loves long walks to the fridge and isn't afraid of commitment, at least when it comes to fiber. But really, until science sorts it all out, it looks like we'll keep playing the field with our veggies, hoping we'll swipe right on that nutrient-dense soulmate.
Right? So, do you think this shift towards personalized nutrition is going to stick long-term, Joe? Or is it just a fancy fad waiting to wilt like an unloved salad in the back of the fridge?
Look, Simon, here's the rub. Everyone wants that tailored fit lifestyle plan, but won't personalized nutrition just amplify our already obsessive diet culture? Imagine fretting over whether your genes are giving you the silent treatment because you chose fries over quinoa. It could become the ultimate excuse for micromanaging every morsel. Sure, if it's the real deal and leads to better health without breaking the bank or our sanity, I'm all in. But there's a chance this gene plates trend might end up being one more high-tech coaster for our beer cans in the wellness hype party.
You've hit a nerve there, Joe. Expensive and obsessive. That's the risk. Thing is, while nutrigenomics might help us dodge food intolerances or diseases down the line, it's not ironclad. Genetics aren't always destiny, especially on your plate. There's a heap of stuff playing out, like our environment, lifestyle, even stress levels. And let's not forget good old-fashioned preference. You're not alone if the thought of a genomic grocery list sounds as fun as watching paint dry. Until the cost dips and science gives a clearer picture, most are better off with simple, balanced chow that doesn't require a PhD to understand. What's next? DNA-based dating apps? Swipe right for compatible cholesterol levels? Now there's a scary thought.
Imagine the scene, Simon. You swab your cheek in the morning and pop it into your NutriScanner 5000. It whirs, beeps, then spits out a slip. Today's menu: oatmeal, no sugar, chicken salad, hold the fun, and broccoli, again. But here's a kicker: add a sprinkle of cheese for morale. Ah, science, taking the joy out of joy eating one gene at a time.
Hey Joe, thinking about this futuristic Nutri-Scanner scenario, it's hilarious and a tad grim, isn't it? But seriously, do you reckon there's a chance we could maintain the joy of eating in this brave new world of tailored diets? Or are we doomed to a fate of flavorless functional feeding?
Hey, the way I see it, no amount of tech's going to snuff out our love for a good meal. There's more to food than just fuel, man. It's about culture, enjoyment, shared experiences. You could give me all the data in the world, but if you think that means I'm trading my grandma's lasagna for some lab-approved nutrient sludge, not happening.
No argument here, Joe. Food's got soul. But since we're deep in it, let's not overlook the potential good stuff gene-based grub could bring to the table. We're talking about getting ahead of health problems, cutting them off at the pass before they become real issues. It's like having a nutritional crystal ball. Imagine knowing which foods might lower your risk of, say, heart disease or type 2 diabetes, and being able to enjoy life without those worries lurking in the back of your mind. Isn't that a bite worth taking?
Sure, it's an alluring thought, Simon. Dodging health bullets with some DNA-decoded wisdom on your plate. The potential of nutrigenomics is massive, like having a health GPS guiding you around potholes in the road ahead. It's not just the absence of illness, it's about tuning up for optimal performance, right? The real feast for thought is how we balance this science with everyday enjoyment. But hey, listeners, what do you think? Could a little gene tweaking lead to big leaps in your health? And are you willing to spit in a tube for it? Let us know.
Speaking of spitting in a tube for health, Joe brings me to these sometimes hilarious, sometimes facepalm-worthy DNA dieting disasters I've heard about. Ever stumble across those stories where someone takes their genetic results as the holy grail and ends up on a banana-only cleanse because they're 0.001% related to a monkey? Or how about those folks convinced they have a bad gene for Brussels sprouts and now act like a cruciferous veggie would cause instant meltdown? The placebo effect gone wild.
Hold up, Simon. Those DNA dieting disasters are a goldmine. But let's not gloss over the fact sometimes people turn a single gene variation into a full-blown food phobia. Heard about that guy who swore off all carbs because he was genetically predisposed to dislike bread? Last I checked, hating on sourdough isn't in our DNA. It's like if you sneeze during wine tasting and suddenly declare you've got the sulfite sensitivity gene. Come on, people. The power of suggestion sure can whip up a dietary frenzy faster than you can say gluten-free.
Wah, hang on a sec. Are you telling me there's actually folks who ditch carbs because they think their DNA told them to? That's bananas, Joe. I mean, imagine finding out you're a smidgen intolerant to something, and next thing you know, you're living off air and good intentions because your genes said so. But seriously, genes dictating dietary do's and don'ts could turn a snack into a panic attack.
Absolutely, Simon. It gets under my skin. You've got people second-guessing every bite because of a gene slip. It's enough to make anyone anxious. Misinterpreting genetic info and letting it rule your diet is like letting a horoscope dictate your career moves. It's troubling, man. Everyone chasing genetic perfection at the cost of their peace of mind. Makes you want to sit them down for a comforting cuppa and a slice of reality check pie.
Hang on, though. Playing devil's advocate here, let's not toss all genetic insights with the bathwater. After all, for some folks, this data can be life-changing in a good way. Take those with legit intolerances or sensitivities backed by solid evidence, like lactose or gluten. You tweak your diet accordingly and feel tons better. Sure, the flip side is some may take it too far, but there's real merit in using science to sidestep genuine health pitfalls. It's all about balance and not letting that DNA report card dictate your entire pantry.
For those just joining in, we've been riffing on the wild world of DNA diet disasters. You know, when folks take genetic testing to the extreme and make eating choices that are more dramatic than a season finale cliffhanger. Picture someone trading all their meals for bananas because they're genetically linked to primates. It's been a laugh, but we've also touched on the serious side, reminding everyone that while genes can guide us to better health, they shouldn't handcuff us to unreasonably restrictive menus. Keep it sane, keep it balanced. That's our takeaway here at Infinite Podcast.
All right, Joe, let's flip the script. We've got people who believe they've got the dessert disaster gene and think a single piece of cake will spell doom. But imagine, just picture, if we swung completely the opposite way. Everyone eats whatever they want, whenever, citing genetic freedom as an excuse. Cake for breakfast? Sure. Ice cream as a side dish? Genetics says go for it. It'd be chaos on a plate. Suddenly, it's not about genes. It's about giving in to every wild craving under the guise of genetic rebellion. I mean, who wouldn't love permission to indulge 24/7? But really, would you trust anyone swinging that dietary wrecking ball blindly?
That's a recipe for disaster, Simon. The genetic freedom smorgasbord sounds fun, but it's playing with fire, health-wise. You've got to wonder about nutritional common sense. Balance vanishes, and it's not just about adding pounds. It's chronic health risks we're stirring into the mix. This is what happens when people misread genetic liberty as an all-access pass to indulgence land. We've got to navigate between genetic insight and plain old healthier choices without tipping the scales into either extreme.
Actually, Joe, let's poke at the other side of the fence. There's folks who think genetic insight is just an excuse to avoid personal responsibility, like my genes made me eat that whole pizza. But here's the deal. Evidence points to some genotypes actually influencing metabolism, appetite, even food preferences. So while blaming your sweet tooth wholly on DNA might be a stretch, it's not entirely off base. Your genetic makeup really can tip the odds when it comes to weight gain or how you process sugars and fats. It's not carte blanche to binge, sure, but recognizing the role genetics play could help tailor more effective, personalized diet plans. No one size fits all here. It's about finding what works for you and sticking with it.
Hey, new listeners, welcome to the party. We've been diving into DNA dieting and all the quirky turns it can take. From folks taking their gene results too seriously and ending up on wacky diets, to those who might blame their DNA for their love of midnight cheese puffs. But we also recognize that genetics can influence our bodies in real ways, like how we handle sugars, or if that full pizza will stick around your waistline longer than you'd like. So while some use it as a dodge card for dietary mishaps, there's a silver lining. Understanding our unique genetic makeup might just help us make smarter food choices. Stay tuned as we chew over more topics here at Infinite Podcast.
But Joe, think about this. Hasn't the whole DNA diet thing turned into a kind of culinary horoscope for some? I mean, you see someone munching celery sticks at a party because their genes allegedly despise carbs. Next thing we know, we'll have social media flooded with #gene diet and people bragging, "I'm an avocado virtuoso, according to my DNA." It's like wearing a badge of honor, making decisions off a printout without actually sitting down with a nutritionist or, heaven forbid, listening to what your body is telling you after eating that third Choco Taco. Genetics may load the gun, but lifestyle's pulling the trigger. Am I right?
You've hit the nail on the head. It's amusing, yet slightly worrying how genetic dieting can echo astrology signs, people using gene diet as their new personality traits. But hey, is the fascination with DNA diets just a trend, or are we glimpsing the future of personalized nutrition? Perhaps it's both. While genetics play a role, it's clear that balancing this knowledge without overhyping is key. We've got to live and eat in the real world too, not just according to leafy greens or Choco Taco prophecies. How about you listeners? Ever taken a DNA test and changed your meal plans because of it? Share those stories.
You know, Joe, as we're jabbering about DNA diets, it makes me wonder, are we slicing a bit too close to the ethical bone here? You've got privacy concerns. Imagine your genetic snack map getting into some corporation's hands. And what about the division this could whip up? Like, if you can't afford that fancy pants DNA test, are you stuck eating mystery meatloaf while the well-off dine on gene-personalized gourmet grub? And let's not start on nutritional determinism, where it's predicted you'll love beets because of your DNA, so nobody even offers you an apple. It sounds like some sort of culinary caste system to me.
Absolutely, it spins into an ethical whirlpool. The privacy angle alone is something to chew on. What if your dietary DNA falls into a marketer's playbook? Could we be facing a future where our own genetic profiles are used to sell us the perfect diet plan or snack box subscription? And speaking of division, what do you think about the idea of genetic elitism in food choices, Simon? Does this tech risk creating a greater divide, not just in terms of health, but also socially and economically?
Genetic elitism. Now, that's a can of worms. You're sitting at a dinner table and someone says they only eat what their genes approve. It's like we're back to school cafeterias with the cool kids versus everyone else. But let's slam on the brakes for a second. If we zoom out, Joe, isn't this just old wine in a new bottle? Rich folks have always had their pick of the crop. Now they just justify it with a lab report. And speaking of privacy, considering how much we share online, maybe we're kidding ourselves thinking our dietary data wouldn't end up as part of some algorithmic buffet spread. So yeah, nutritional determinism also gets a side eye from me. It sounds like another way to pigeonhole people into neat little boxes. And since when has that ever been the full picture? It's weirdly futuristic and sort of dystopian all at once.
Whoa, hold on. Genetic elitism? That's a concept I hadn't considered. We could be cruising towards a world where what you eat isn't just a personal choice, but a status symbol prescribed by your genes. The socioeconomic divide that might create is troubling. Picture the rich dining on precision food while others get a one-size-fits-all diet. Plus, privacy concerns are huge. It's like opening the fridge to find Big Brother munching on your leftovers. Let's not even dive into how companies could exploit this data. Nutritional determinism? That sounds straight out of a sci-fi novel, a bit too Gattaca for comfort. And let's not forget, humans are complex. We can't boil down our eating habits to a simple gene readout.
Yeah, Joe, I'm not about to hang a do not disturb sign on my snack drawer for Big Brother. But think bigger. What does it mean for our dinner tables if companies start tailoring food advertisements based on our DNA? It's personalized marketing jacked up on steroids. Plus, it could spiral into employers peeking at your lunchbox like it's some kind of crystal ball for your health and health insurance. And this whole nutritional determinism thing smacks of reducing culture and choice down to mere biology. A world where you're judged for tucking into a burger because your genes say salad. That's a grim menu for the future.
Forget about Big Brother in the snack drawer. This is next-level intrusion into our personal habits. Now you've got ads targeting your genetic weak spots, like kryptonite cupcakes because your DNA says you can't resist sweets. It's a tailored trap. Plus, imagine your boss eyeing your lunch for health risks. That's a privacy invasion on a whole new scale. And look at nutritional determinism. If we start judging people's worth by their diets or what their genes say, we're stepping into a world where biology is destiny. Are we just going to roll over and let that happen? I'm not down for a future where we lose the joy of eating to genetic predictions.
Rollover? Not this guy. But let's twist the kaleidoscope a bit, Joe. Imagine showing up at a job interview and they're less interested in your resume and more into your lunchbox. Because, hey, those genes of yours might jack up their insurance premiums. It's discrimination with a side of quinoa. And I'm all for a cheeky cheat meal, but now there's this looming guilt cloud because my DNA says I should be munching on nuts and berries. Whatever happened to eating just because it tastes good, or it's tradition, or here's an idea, it makes you happy? Let's not let our forks turn into pitchforks in some dystopian dinner dance. What if we say nay to nutritional typing and just enjoy that slice of pie without a genetic guilt trip?
Man, Simon, this picture you're painting hits home. It's unsettling. The thought of walking into an interview and having my lunch scrutinized more than my skills, that stirs up the pot of anxiety. And what good is living in a world where our personal choices like savoring a slice of pie are second-guessed by genetic blueprints? Are we forgetting the human element, pleasure, tradition, happiness in eating? I'll take that guilt-free joy bite over nutritional typing any day. Let's keep food about flavor and fellowship, not formulas and fear.
Honestly, Joe, that hits a raw nerve. It bugs me to picture sitting down with family or friends and having the shadow of genetic guidelines looming over us, robbing those moments of their warmth. Food's about sharing laughs and stories across the table. It's that secret sauce of human connection. The thought of stripping down eating to just codes in our DNA, like we're some sort of machines, it's unsettling. From a simple plate of grandma's cookies to your best buddy's barbecue, these things should feed our souls, not just our cells. Let's not lose that, okay? Keep that slice of pie sacred.
Couldn't agree more. Food is so much richer when it's about those moments of connection, not just a genetic report card. Let's keep the soul in our suppers and make sure those plates of grandma's cookies remain a symbol of warmth and story sharing, not a scientific breakdown. People aren't just machines. We're stories, histories, laughter around a table. As for DNA diets, there's plenty more to chew on with the ethical side. Privacy, socioeconomic factors, joy eating versus health eating. This pie isn't finished baking yet. What do you all think? How far should we let science dictate our diets?
While we're tossing around this whole DNA diet thing, it's like we're a whisk away from doctors scribbling out prescriptions for pears instead of pills. Thinking out loud here, but isn't it wild that there are already some docs dishing out dietary plans based on patients' genes? It weaves right into this tapestry of personalized healthcare, a hint of what's simmering on the future's back burner. What if one day your insurance chimes in and says, sure, we'll cover those Brussels sprouts if your DNA gives them the thumbs up for keeping you hale and hearty? That is one funky fruit salad of possibilities and pitfalls for everyone. Regulators, Joe Public, and even the folks in white coats. What's your take?
Hey, new listeners, you're tuning into a juicy conversation about the future of food and health. We're dishing out thoughts on whether your next doctor's visit could include a DNA-based diet prescription. Think prescription produce. With some medics already weaving nutrigenomics into practice, imagine getting healthcare plans where your genetic profile dictates whether you should be loading up on kale or kiwis. Could insurance companies jump on board, covering foods that keep you fit? There's a bushel of questions about how this could shake out for everybody involved. Stick around as we peel back the layers on this fascinating topic.
Right, so with doctors handing out diet plans tailored to our DNA, here's a curly question. How comfy are we having our genetics dictate our grocery list? And what about those without the dough for DNA tests? Does health become a luxury item? Then there's insurance. If they're footing the bill for your blueberries, could they start dictating dinner? It's like opening Pandora's produce drawer. What bothers you most about this leafy-looking future, Joe?
That's a tangled vine of dilemmas. The comfort level's got to be low when your genes are picking out groceries. Feels like losing a bit of choice there, doesn't it? I get the preventative angle, but tying health strictly to wealth through DNA testing, that creates an uneven playing field. And talk about insurance dictating diet, that's a slippery slope. What's next? Penalizing for a pizza slice. It's freedom versus formula in our food choices here. What chaps my hide? Potential loss of personal choice and privacy under the guise of better health. That's my beef with this whole prescription produce plot.
Well, Joe, when you mention losing our choice, it flips all my switches. Yeah, on one hand, we've got this shiny prospect of a future where every snack is a step towards stellar health, but let's not gloss over individual flavors of life. It's like if my doc tells me to snub steak for seaweed. What happens to my beloved barbecue traditions? As for privacy, imagining insurance guys auditing my fridge, it's like dietary big brother got an invite to dinner. And how long before you are what you eat turns into you eat what we say? Personal choices should stay personal, or else we're just puppets with nutrition strings, man. That's my mouthful on the matter.
Absolutely, Simon. The balance between health and choice is a razor's edge. Sure, there's the sparkle of slashing disease rates with personalized produce prescriptions, but at what cost to personal autonomy? Translating DNA directly into diet kinda sidesteps cultural and individual preferences. And as for privacy, it's one thing to manage health risks, but another to have your lifestyle micromanaged by insurance companies. It becomes a tug of war between benefiting public health and maintaining private freedoms. There's a need for safeguards to prevent this from becoming an intrusive norm. We should be wary of turning nutritional guidelines into strict diets decreed from on high. Let's keep the conversation going, folks. What's the right recipe for blending health tech and personal freedoms?
Joe, and everyone listening, let's unpack this produce prescription biz. If docs start designing diets off DNA data sheets, where's the line in the nutritional sand? Sure, preventing sickness before it takes root is smart gardening, but what about freedom of choice? After all, we're not robots programmed to nosh on nothing but the optimal fuel. We're messy humans with tastes and traditions. And about insurance, covering carrots but cuffing you for cupcakes? Risky business, that. There's potential for a health revolution here, no doubt, but without some serious rules and respect for personal space, we might just be swapping one kind of unhealthy for another, a diet dictated by someone else. That ain't my flavor of freedom. Let's make sure choice stays on the menu.
It's spot on, Simon. This topic really gets under my skin. Makes me feel fenced in just thinking about some health guru handpicking my meals from a test tube analysis. Where's the room to be human in that? And it's not just about taste. It's about the memories and experiences linked to those tastes. I love my mornings with a hearty bowl of cereal, a nod to simpler childhood times. This whole control aspect, with insurance companies potentially pulling the strings, it gives me the creeps. The very idea that our plates might become colorless collections of should eat rather than want to eat, man, that robs us of something deeply personal. We've got to hold on to that freedom, keep choice as the main ingredient of our meal plans.
You've got it in a nutshell, Joe. We're not fashioning some future where we swap grandma's recipes for food from the pharma fairies. Breakfast isn't just fuel, it's nostalgia in a bowl. Your cereal's more than grains and milk. It's a time machine to Saturday morning cartoons. Who wants that swapped out for a science-approved snack that tastes like the box it came in? And sure, insurance holding the purse strings on our pantry? That smacks of dystopia dressed up as diet planning. Not my cup of tea. I say let's keep fighting for our right to indulge in our culinary quirks, because when all is said and done, aren't those little pleasures what make life worth living? Keep the freedom in our feasts, I say.
Absolutely, Simon. We can't just hand over the keys to our personal palates. It's striking how you tied nostalgia to something as routine as eating breakfast. But that raises another question, doesn't it? If we start going down this DNA diet path, will future kids even have a chance to build those fond memories around food? Or will they grow up on purely science-backed meals, missing out on these small yet significant joys of life? What do you think the real cost of this trade-off would be, listeners?
For sure, Joe. Imagine kids munching on engineered eats instead of mom's pancakes. Feels wrong. Do we want to live in a world where sprinkles are replaced by supplements? Where the rich tapestry of food memories is bleached to fit a genetic mold? It's not just what's on our plates that matters. It's also about what these foods mean to us, the Sundays spent baking with family, the summer barbecues with friends. So then, what do we value more? The health benefits promised by a scientifically sculpted diet, or the deep-rooted cultural and emotional connections forged through our current eating habits? Think about it, folks. Where should the line be drizzled?
You know, while we're chewing over this topic of diets and DNA, it's fascinating to consider how food doesn't just fill us up. It talks to our genes in a language we're just beginning to understand. With this wild field of epigenetics, it seems we may be having back-and-forth dialogues with our DNA over every meal. It's like those leafy greens and juicy fruits might whisper sweet nothings into our genetic code, potentially flicking on the good switches and patting the bad ones. If what we eat can nudge our gene expression one way or another, it kind of adds a new layer to "you are what you eat," doesn't it? So let's dig into this hot plate of epigenetic eats. What's simmering in the pot is not only our immediate health, but even the hand-me-down traits in our family recipe book. How do you feel about that?
Joe, when people spout, "you are what you eat," I bet they're not thinking about chatting up their chromosomes over a plate of nachos. It's wild stuff, this epigenetics. Like, are we actually arguing with our ancestry every time we hit the salad bar? But hold on, let's not just gulp down the Kool-Aid here. Can swapping fries for fruit really fiddle with our family tree? It sounds like one of those late-night infomercials. Eat this superfood and unlock your superhero genes. Yet, picture it. Munching on some nuts might hush up the genes nobody invited to the party, while snarfing dark chocolate could crank up the tunes on the good ones. Honestly, though, isn't it a bit sci-fi thinking a kale smoothie can rewrite your genetic destiny? There's flavor in the thought, sure, but let's keep our feet on the ground and remember we're more than walking food processors. Our lifestyles, environments, laughs, loves all stir into the pot way more than that side dish of asparagus.
Haha, Simon, Definitely more sci-fi than cookbook. It's like every snack might have a secret handshake with our DNA. So should we eye that garlic bread like it's a genetic remote control? Makes you think dinner is not just feeding us. It could be feeding into our future too.
Hold up, Joe. Are you telling me my spaghetti dinner might be doing some sort of molecular mambo with my DNA? That's like saying my grandma's secret sauce could have been tweaking more than just taste buds. It might have been fiddling with the family code. That's a bit of a noodle twister. It kind of reframes the whole idea of you are what you eat into you are what your food tells your genes to do, doesn't it? What's next? Blaming my love for donuts on an overactive sweet gene. This epigenetics thing is a real spicy meatball to swallow.
So get this. If foods can talk to our genes, what's my sweet tooth saying? Is it whispering sweet nothings to my DNA, or just throwing a sugar-coated tantrum demanding attention? I guess family gatherings will need a new disclaimer. Warning, Aunt Judy's triple-layer cake may alter your genetic expression. Proceed with frosting.
Aunt Judy's cake changing my genes? I call shenanigans, Joe. If a sugar rush came with a side of gene tweak, we'd all be mutating like comic book characters every birthday party. Can you imagine? Oh look, Timmy had one too many slices. Now he can do long division in his head. Let's not make Aunt Judy the next Nobel Prize contender for accidental gene therapy just yet. Yes, food might chit-chat with our DNA, but it's no Dr. Dolittle scenario. We're complex beings, and while those broccoli florets could be playing a part in the cellular symphony, they're not the whole orchestra. Look, I'm all for siding with science, but until my veggie burger grants me X-ray vision, I'll keep a skeptical eyebrow raised.
You're onto something, Simon. Foods don't turn us into superheroes, but think about the subtler powers they could have. Like epigenetics suggests green tea might tune down inflammation genes, or how cruciferous veggies like broccoli are linked with a tango of anti-cancer benefits at the genetic level. It's not superpowers, it's subtle, behind-the-scenes tweaks where our health might tip its hat to what's on our plate. The science isn't saying we'll sprout capes, but maybe, just maybe, it'll help us dodge some health bullets in the long run.
Hey Joe, pump the brakes there. Sure, broccoli has its charms, but let's not dress up our greens as miracle workers just yet. The research into epigenetics and diet is like dipping your toe in the ocean. It's vast, uncharted, and a bit murky. There are studies that hint at these epic health boosts, right? But we're missing the all-important manual. How much of this veg magic needs to be eaten, and how regularly for Harry Potter-level gene tweaking? The body's a complex jungle, and we've got to traverse it with more than breadcrumbs. Plus, you've got environmental factors, lifestyle, and other genetic elements playing Marco Polo with health outcomes. So heavy-hitting claims need heavy-lifting evidence. We can't crown every kale leaf as genetic nobility without the science scepter giving it a royal tap. Let's be Sherlock about it, not Watson, and keep digging for the elemental truths before declaring dietary evolution.
Right. We need more than a few studies to make grand claims. But in all this talk about epigenetics and the power of food, I'm curious, have you ever felt different after making any significant changes to your diet? Not just physically, but have you noticed any mental or mood shifts that might hint at these deeper genetic conversations?
Listeners just tuning in, you've jumped into a juicy convo about food and genes. We're gnawing on the idea that what we munch might mingle with our DNA, a real molecular mixer. The science shindig we're peering at is called epigenetics, literally above genetics, where certain foods like greens or green tea could potentially turn gene expressions up, down, or even off. No superhero claims here. It's all about the small, unseen ways food can influence health below the surface. So while Joe gets misty-eyed over cereals of yesteryear, we're pondering if they did more than just tickle our taste buds. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet of thoughts, so pull up a chair.
You know, this all takes me back to college. I had a buddy, let's call him Gym Rat Jerry. Guy lived and breathed the gym. His diet was a finely tuned machine, just lean protein, veggies, and whole grains. And we'd chuckle about it because he turned into the go-to guy for energy. One semester, he decided to experiment. He swapped his strict regimen for whatever was on special at the cafeteria, just to save time. Within weeks, we saw a different Jerry. He wasn't flagging in energy, per se, but he became more sloth than dynamo. It was like watching a real live demo of how food can flip switches in us. It might have been Jerry's mood, focus, or pure physiology responding to the shift, but that stint at the snack line, it transformed him. Sure, Jerry bounced back to his healthy self eventually, but that snack semester made some invisible waves for sure. It painted a fascinating picture of potential, where what he ate seemed to play tunes on an unseen genetic level. Makes you wonder just how much our meal choices conduct that molecular orchestra hidden away in our cells.
Man, Jerry's snack semester sounds like a season of a sitcom, comical but educational. You hit the nail on the head, Joe. What we feed ourselves isn't just about filling our tanks. It might just be giving direction to our inner workings at levels we're barely beginning to get. Maybe the secret menu to dialing in on our best selves is hidden in plain sight, right there on our plates. Who knows? Perhaps those mood swings and energy dips are more than just needing a coffee boost. They could be subtle sexts we're sending our genes through greasy fries or goji berries. It's food for thought that keeps the dinner table conversation going indefinitely. What's the next morsel of wisdom we'll chew on in this genetic gourmand series, I wonder?
Diving into the spice drawer, ever wonder if turmeric is more than just a curry's best friend? Turns out, curcumin, this golden spice's active ingredient, might have a side gig as a gene whisperer. It's been cozying up in the spice market for ages, but now it's strutting its stuff in the lab, showing off moves that might put it on the map of genetic regulation. Who knew your kitchen rack held a potential key to unlocking health mysteries at a molecular level?
So, Joe, are we talking about sprinkling some turmeric on our eggs in the morning and suddenly doing a genetic tango? Or is this more of a slow dance with long-term effects? How much of this glittery spice do we need before we start seeing our genes boogie?
We're looking at a marathon, not a sprint. This isn't a one-time sprinkle situation. It's more about consistency over time. For any significant genetic jive, research suggests you'd need regular and concentrated curcumin, beyond what you'd get in a typical dash of turmeric on your scramble. Plus, scientists are still figuring out the best ways to absorb it into our system to possibly groove with our DNA. It's one part of a complex health puzzle. No magic bullet yet, but definitely an intriguing piece.
Wait, back up. Are you serious? Regular hits of curcumin could be doing the cha-cha with our cells on the down low? That's next level. So, slipping turmeric into the mix isn't just for kicks. We're talking a tag team for long-term wellness. This whole time I thought turmeric was just there to make my curry snazzy. Talk about undercover agent in the spice rack. I'm picturing it in dark glasses whispering secrets to our genes. It's no wonder scientists are all over this like white on rice. They must be buzzing to decode that golden puzzle piece. Epigenetic gold rush. Here we come.
Absolutely, the hype around curcumin makes you give that spice rack a second glance. But let's hold our horses. While promising, there's so much we don't know about how effectively it communicates with our DNA. Yes, studies suggest anti-inflammatory, antioxidant effects which could nudge gene expression, but translating those lab dish dances to human benefits? That's another ballgame. We can't crown curcumin king of the genes just on its potential. We need solid, clinical evidence at scale to understand the real impact. Until then, my take is optimistic caution. We include it as one part of a balanced diet and wait for science to catch up before banking on any genetic revolution in a jar.
Optimistic caution? Joe, that sounds like trying to high-five a mirage. While turmeric tails are tasty, I'm not about to toss my vitamin pills and hang all my hats on the curcumin bandwagon. Lab dishes can't gossip back about how they feel, right? But people have complex internal chit-chats that one player can't monopolize. Until we've got a lineup of folks waving blood tests and shouting curcumin for president, let's keep our spice love real, but our health hype in check. I'll dust my omelet with a bit more yellow, believing it might do some cellular mingling, sure. Yet, putting all eggs in the golden basket? Not without more solid proof than just might and could. If future studies whip up stronger evidence, don those sunglasses, because we're going to a science rave.
If you're just joining us, We've been taking a playful jab at the idea that turmeric, the stuff that turns your curry and fingers yellow, might be more than just culinary bling. It's about curcumin, turmeric's main magic dust, which scientists think could tango with our cellular blueprints in subtle, healthy ways. We're unpacking research hints that it might influence genes to help fend off diseases, but we're not leaping onto the hype train without a ticket of hard evidence. We've had some chuckles picturing turmeric as an undercover health agent in our spice rack. But is it ready for the Genetic Hall of Fame? We've served up a steaming plate of maybe, but let's see. So keep your ears peeled as we sift through the science and separate peppery facts from flavorful fiction.
You know, Joe, this reminds me of my great-uncle Ned. The man was practically married to his spice garden, believed every plant had a secret superpower. He'd spend hours babbling about his basil and whispering sweet nothings to his sage. We all thought he was just quirky Uncle Ned with a green thumb and too much time on his hands. But then, out of the blue, comes this study talking up turmeric's genetic tango, and suddenly, Uncle Ned's ramblings don't seem so far-fetched. It's like he knew that these zesty little characters had backstage passes to the cellular show long before science started tuning in. He was onto something with his natural intuition, but even he'd want the rigorous research to back it up before turning his spice sanctuary into a genetics lab. Who'd have thought Uncle Ned could be grazing the edge of a scientific breakthrough with his dirty gardening gloves?
Sometimes wisdom is hidden in those quirky habits. Uncle Ned's spice sanctuary was kind of an analog version of today's digital health trackers. Makes you wonder what other eccentric practices might be ahead of their time, just waiting for science to catch up.
So let's not turn our kitchens into labs just yet. I mean, Uncle Ned might have been onto something, but how many Neds are out there sprinkling cinnamon on their toast thinking it's the key to immortality? Just because one spice steps out of the shadows doesn't make it a genie. I'd say keep your spice racks grounded in reality. Enjoy the flavors, sure, but let's not hallucinate health halos around every herb until we've got that solid scientific handshake. Wisdom isn't always wearing wizard robes. Sometimes it's in waiting for the data before we wildly waltz down wellness wonderland with every anecdote that sounds like a life hack. So while turmeric takes its turn in the research spotlight, let's stay curious but cautious, lest we start crediting cumin with more clout than it can currently claim. Who's up for seasoning their science stew slowly?
Overstepping facts with folklore is a no-go. Look, curcumin from turmeric has been shown in some studies to modify inflammation pathways and could potentially interfere with the kind of cellular corruption that leads to cancer. There's also chatter about its role in neuroprotection, potentially guarding against pesky plaques in diseases like Alzheimer's. But let's put it in context. These effects aren't from dashes on dishes, but from concentrated doses often found in supplements, which vary in bioavailability. Plus, these findings are largely from test tubes or animal models, not yet enough human trials for a foolproof health claim. And remember Ned's cinnamon toast? Cinnamon does have compounds that can be beneficial. For example, cinnamaldehyde has anti-inflammatory properties. But again, we're talking moderation and part of a diverse diet, not cinnamon becoming your go-to doctor. Getting herbs and spices into meals is smart cooking, flavor without the fat. But turning them into miracle workers requires more research, not just tasty tales from Uncle Ned's garden. Keep sprinkling that turmeric, but do it for the love of flavor while science simmers on its health potential.
All right, folks, that wraps up today's Spice Lace saga. A big thank you to all you listeners for tuning in and getting a taste of our genetic gourmet discussions. Remember, keep your ears hungry for more because we've got plenty of hearty conversations to serve up. Make sure you come back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern for another helping of the Infinite Podcast. Until then, sprinkle some fun on your day and take what we say with a pinch of salt or turmeric if you're feeling adventurous. Catch you on the flip side.
Get ready for a chuckle, thinking every bite of kale mutates you into a Kryptonian, or fearing that a donut will doom your DNA. Let's chew on these genomic guffaws next time.
Imagine if noshing on nachos gave you night vision, or a carrot stick turned you into a math whiz, our meals would be like choosing superpowers from a menu. Can't wait to dive into that buffet of bloopers next time.